hopefully we have ourselves somebody from Australia, and Nick is the name. That would be great. Introduce yourself and
Yeah,
let us know what's up.
yeah. G'day. How are you? How are you, Adam?
I am fine.
Yeah,
What's up?
appreciate your analysis. It's been interesting
Yeah.
scopes when I've been able to catch them. I know sometimes they go long and can't watch them all, but
Yeah, I've
yeah,
rarely
but
done these in a while, but I should say, Nick, back when I did right during the election, I had more people from New Zealand and Australia due to the time shift that they
yeah,
were actually
right.
awake and listening, and everybody else here was asleep. So don't let me interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, and I noticed that you've branched out recently on Twitch and other channels. So it's
Mhm.
oh, sorry, am I cracking there or?
No, no, you're good.
Oh,
I'm just adjusting. Yeah.
yeah. So I'd just be interested in a couple of things. If they voted to impeach and it went to a Senate trial, I think I caught some of your scope the other day
Hmm.
talking about the behind closed doors aspect of it.
Yes.
So none of it. How would that actually expose a lot of the witnesses and uh, would they end up calling everyone from Hillary and Obama and whistleblowers and Schiff and staff, and how would that actually even work?
Yeah, there's two parts of the closed door elements that we have by virtue of the 26 Senate rules on impeachment that were set up in 1868 during the Andrew Johnson impeachment, and then of course there's been procedural things that have been added, not much though since then. And then when you vote by resolution, you vote on certain ways to do things. I wouldn't call them rules, but there's two things that won't change as far as closed door deliberations are concerned. Closed door deliberations are what happened at the end or during, and that is when the Senate goes in as they would if they were jurors in a trial, and they are completely closed out from public intervention, and they're free to debate each other behind closed doors if someone wants to make a point that they think is relevant or present or whatever. They're free to do so, but none of that is fit to be told to anyone. It would be considered one of the most egregious breaches if they one of the senators were to leak out what another senator said behind closed doors during the deliberation process. And they all do deliberate together, all 100 senators of both parties. Now, the other, what you're probably referring to is the closed door deposition part of this. Now, that is within specificity of the rules and procedures. So, more procedures and rules. They'll have to do a resolution that decides, okay, we're going to start with this, and we're going to have a lawyer from every party involved in each one of these closed depositions. They will be recorded, transcribed, video recorded, I mean, and transcribed, only made available in private, high security settings to the senators for review, meaning these are witnesses that will not be made to the public. Their statements will not be made to the public, meaning you could call somebody theoretically as sensitive as Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, anybody that fits into the narrative of maybe Alexei Chalupa, who was working with Ukrainian officials to hurt Trump. I mean, now because of everything that Adam Schiff has allowed into the ether, by bringing in all of these people from Taylor to Kent to Fiona Hill, Nosy B. Holmes, Hale. Everybody's got Sunland. They've all got their own little stories. But what they did was they dropped names in there.
Mm.
And Volker was the only one who really seemed to know what was going on and try to keep himself out of it. But all those names that were dropped are now part of the record, public record. The Senate, should they receive these articles of impeachment, they will go through a list of who they want to call. Now, in the Clinton impeachment, provided how old you sound younger than me. So, but back in 1998, this was actually 99 by the time that they started the Senate impeachment hearings on. They had closed door depositions with Vernon Jordan, who was a very close friend and lawyer of the president, who basically got Monica Lewinsky a job to keep her quiet. They also brought Monica Lewinsky herself in, and they brought Betty Curie, the president's personal secretary, in, and Sidney Blumenthal, his political button man, as they call them. That not all of that ever got out there for public consumption, and that frustrates some people. But they're looking at this as like a trial, and what they try to tell people is that the House version of impeachment is like an indictment where it's all secret and you collect the information. There's no defense. So they're trying to, that's not at all the way the founding fathers put together the impeachment in Article 2, but that's what Adam Schiff is trying to say. In the Senate, it's a very, very somber, solemn, it's realistically as close to a state funeral as it is as a legislative parliamentary process. So unfortunately for all of us, we will not be flies in the room of that closed door deposition. But that deposition material goes to the full body, the full deliberative body, 100 senators, and they look over that. And they will decide by rule of 51 who will be called and who won't be. And there will be subject of public, there could be public hearings by a select committee established by both Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell that call in these witnesses, Nick, and they have to answer. It's potentially explosive stuff.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Yep.
Oh, so I was going to say, there's no reason for, Republican or McConnell to change the processes to blow it out into a full public embarrassment hearing where everyone is hauled before cameras and publicly aired like Schiff has. It would seem that down the track, that would be exactly what they would probably want to do to blow apart the Democrat.
It seems that, and always remember this in the great United States of America, and people that are calling, you have to wait one at a time. Thank you. Call back in. But Nick has a great point here. The Senate considers itself to be the greatest deliberative body in the world. It really is. The sanctimony is a little bit thick. You gag on it. I mean, these people consider themselves, 100 is equal to 1 of the president's power, and they have no desire to create a circus over there. They actually work in opposition of what the House seems to be willing to do, both in '98 with the Newt Gingrich and Henry Hyde-led efforts against Bill Clinton, and now the Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi side. This is just the antithesis of what you would expect, because you would think you'd learn from the abject failures of 1998, and so the Senate will learn what worked for them in '98. Now that process was truncated. The process was expected to be in receipt of the Senate in early January after the elections, a brand new session. It was not, any other motion in American politics and government would not carry over 2 separate congressional sessions. They took it up, but keep in mind, they took it up after the Republicans were destroyed in the House by taking up articles of impeachment. So they had a very different attitude in 1999 when they brought this up, and they wanted this thing done expeditiously, but they wanted it done fairly. And what you ended up with, you had 2 articles of impeachment that were brought up, and one was essentially perjury. The second was essentially abuse of power. And that is two very different charges. And you had certain senators that went one way or the other in the Republican Party. But for the most part, no charge received more than 50 of the 67 required. And so it was that far. Now you're talking about Bill Clinton, who was pretty much busted in a civil deposition lying, and got busted with actual disgustingly deposited DNA on a blue dress. I mean, everything you could possibly not want to talk about, that happened. But they managed to keep it very respectful. And the last thing I'm going to say is that while these might not be spectacular trials that are televised, I believe there will be witnesses televised. The questions will be asked by what is likely to be about a 6 or 7 member Senate Select Committee. And they may have some they may have some questions rather on that. But the president's lawyers are in the room, the witnesses' lawyers are in the room, and the Senate lawyers are in the room. So there's due process all around. But what's very remarkable about this process, and it will not change, it cannot change, is the fact that we talked a little bit about our Chief Justice of the Supreme Court coming over to preside. Whatever he does, if he's asked to make a ruling on something, which Rehnquist really was never asked to make any rulings on evidence or testimony in 1998, I don't think Chief Justice Roberts will be either. The point is the fact that whatever he says can be overturned by a simple majority vote. So no matter what Roberts wants in this trial, McConnell is actually running the entire show. And one last point, no senator, Nick, no senator may ask any question to anyone. They must submit in writing questions. So when the House managers, i.e. prosecutors, are presenting their case, which will be done over 2 or 3 days, they have to write it out, give it to Chief Justice Roberts to be asked. And more importantly, when they vote guilty or not guilty, that's how they vote at the end. That will be televised, but there will be zero debate on the matter. You cannot talk. There'll be no speeches about why you're not voting one way or another. So it's a very, very low-key process compared to what the House does.
Right. You wouldn't see anything like the questioning that went on in the House with Schiff. All the back and forth and the questioning. No, nothing like that.
I thought that was a piss-poor reflection of our entire process. Now, other countries are, used to a little bit more of a bombastic exchange or a little bit of people getting their gumption up, but they rarely resort to these types of personal attacks and calling everyone's character into question. And it's just disgusting to watch. And I'm embarrassed as an American that a lot of networks carried Adam Schiff, because, you might not know, but never in the history of this entire country has the Intelligence Committee been utilized in any way, shape, or form as a part of an impeachment effort. It's never happened before.
Well, he was just really putting on Hollywood speech performances for the evening news media. It was all like sound bites and just watching them reported on different, CNN versus Fox. They were just completely different takes on the same set of facts.
And that has borne out in the public opinion, to be honest with you. I mean, it is sad, but we do have a lot of different options here, and we're lucky because not a lot of countries out there that want to take on this type of effect on look at what happened to Netanyahu over there with, a limited base of media that's either on one side or the other. It's not good for him. I mean, we do have options. On the downside, we also have Twitter and Facebook, which put out a lot of bad information. So for the most part, we made it through this far without a problem, trending in our direction that we can solve this amicably and not destroy the fabric of our Constitution.
All right. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Thank you. That's Nick in Australia.